What's going on, y'all? This is New York Touch here with a good friend of mine, the assembly member from the 85th District of New York State Assembly, Kenneth Burgos. We're actually here in front of our old high school where it all started, the Bronx High School of Science, just reconnecting and talking about where we've been throughout all this time. But Kenny, just my first question for you, being one of the youngest members elected to the New York State Assembly, just tell me about your experience and how you got started, but also some of your proudest moments.
Yeah, so I started my career out in government when I was in college. I interned at the New York City Council, and that was really my into the government world throughout New York City. I worked there for about 5 years, working on campaigns, working on city budgets, and I got so involved, in my district and in my community that we got to a point where the member for my district stepped down, and I said, you know what, I think I had the experience, the know-how, and the life experience in that neighborhood to run for the state level, and I ran last year in 2020.
Really, really good. Has there any, what is one of the biggest, because I already assume that a lot of your colleagues are probably, if not twice your age, a little older than you.
Yeah.
How's that experience been, kind of just navigating through that gap?
It's been interesting. In government itself, you tend to have, obviously, older members who are representatives, but the staff is always pretty young. And that was my first experience. But then going to the legislature and then being an actual member where, people are much older, I expected, I guess, a different environment, but it's been pretty welcoming, right? People have been welcoming, people have been helpful, and people have been open to hearing my position, right? My life experience in New York State growing up in the 90s. You have members that their experience, right, is growing up in maybe the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. So I think it's good. It's a conducive environment to have our state and our government work for everyone when we have all different backgrounds, all different ages.
Do you ever feel like any pressure or any insecurities from kind of being a young guy in the game?
Yeah, I think it's natural to have imposter syndrome, and I'm always open about it because I think it's something that we need to be open about. People experience that in anything what they do, right? Whether you're elected a position or you just go into a new job, you get that imposter syndrome. Do I belong here? Do I have the experience? Do I have the knowledge or the education or the network to actually be in this space? And you have to be confident and know, yes, people decide you should be in this space. So yeah, had imposter syndrome in the beginning, but now I'm confident. I'm happy to be where I am, and it's an honor.
That's really important. Going into politics, there were a lot of things that you kind of tackled early, and a lot of positions that you were taking, whether it was the legalization of marijuana or even visiting Rikers Island and going into the facilities. Do you care to share a little bit about the Rikers Island experience?
Yeah, I could share a lot, but I've hit the ground running. I really enjoy the experience again and the ability to represent my people in my area, and one of those roles that we get as state legislators is the ability to pop in on detention centers anywhere throughout New York State unannounced. And I also represent Rikers Island, so I felt that it was really important for me to go to Rikers to see what's going on, especially this year we passed halt solitary confinement. So I wanted to be there in person to see what the institution would look like now that we passed this law. And I can go on all day on the experience there, but it's eye-opening to say the least.
Recently, New York State passed the legalization of marijuana, huge historic legislation for so many people in New York, those who may have been convicted of marijuana nonviolent offenses, or those who just honestly want to smoke to release some stress. Do you care to share about just your experience and your contributions to that effort?
I wish the legalization of marijuana was something that I could take full credit for, right? But I was a sponsor of the bill, but this is really a bill that has been around for several years, even before I was elected. And there's so many advocates and people pushing for this, in New York for years. But I was excited to be in this historic moment where we can really reverse the harmful effects that we know the war on drugs has done, not just in this country, but really here in New York City. New York City was the marijuana arrest capital of the country. Black men were arrested at 8 times the rate as their white counterparts for low-level, nonviolent offenses of marijuana that set them on a path of destruction. Tore families apart and just put you on a path where your life could never get back on track. So legalizing marijuana was, for me, not so much giving people the ability to smoke marijuana. It was actually more so, relieving a community, relieving people of color and communities of color from the threat of being arrested for something that we know is inherently not dangerous and is, frankly, does not cause any harm.
And the point that you mentioned about marijuana and people being harassed and searched was huge in New York, especially us. We're in our 20s. We grew up in the stop and frisk era in New York. We went to high school during the stop and frisk era. And I feel like a lot of the times, marijuana could be that used for someone going to prison or having a record early on. And any one of us could have been stopping first. I was stopping first a couple times.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure you was, and any of those situations could have stopped you from being where you are today, or even me. So we're stopping first with the high school. How do you feel like local politics could have changed that or contributed to the change of stopping first in New York?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone going to high school or school during the Bloomberg eras knows about stop and frisk. If you were a person of color, chances are you were stopping frisk. I was stopping frisk. And that's why I tell people why it's so important. Local politics really shapes your life in New York City, right? That was a Bloomberg era decision. That was a decision literally made by one man. In New York City, the mayor has almost unilateral power over the police. Not even your city council can do much to change that. So now when you have an election coming up from the time of this rolling in 30 days, on June 22nd, we're picking a new mayor, new city council, new comptroller. That's why I tell people it's so important to be involved in local politics, because it's really what's going to shape your everyday life here in New York City. So do you want to live in a city where you're stop and frisk, or do you want a city that works for everyone?
And I feel like it's funny because politics is all around us, and we talk about that all the time. The things that you love in the world, the things that you hate in your day-to-day life are affected by your elected officials, by where you vote, where you put your interest in. And I feel like if more people understood that or kind of seen it as value, we got greater voter turnout, like with the primary coming in June. I feel like a lot of people need to pay attention to the primary in June, because the people that we do elect, all the city council seats, the comptroller, the mayor can control what New York looks like for the next 4 to 6 years. So definitely pay attention to it. Since we had the Bronx High School Science, specialized high school in New York, one of the best public high schools, not only in New York, but the country. I'm kind of surprised that I even made it here sometimes. But like me, being from Park City, young black kid, you know, there wasn't many people of color in Bronx Science. And for you as well, there was a lot of code switching, but just assimilation that we had to kind of go through in order to acclimate to the culture here. I know it was really tough for me. It was probably really tough for you. It's kind of why we kind of found each other here. But talk about just Bronx Science and your first days here and how it was transitioning just to the culture of the school.
I hated it the first day, honestly. I remember coming in here the first day, and you know, when you come through the New York City public school systems, you came here, you knew the kids here weren't the same kids you were in middle school and elementary school with. I actually remember seeing you in the hallway with a polo beanie and a Pele Pele on, and I said, okay, there's regular people in this school. And it gave me a little bit of hope. All right, maybe I could hang in this school. But this school taught me a lot. It no doubt shaped who I am. The Bronx Science, you know, really gave me a wealth of experience through like other people's lives, right? You have this school with so many different cultures, so many kids from different parts of the city, backgrounds. You know, again, when you go to school in middle school in the Bronx, you're really only dealing with, you know, Puerto Rican, black, and some Dominican kids, to be quite honest. So it really broadens your horizons at not only what the world is, but what possibilities are. When you speak to kids from, you know, more privileged backgrounds, right, and what their parents do, and what they've accomplished, and what their goals and aspirations are, it teaches you to kind of aim higher, and maybe your dreams are a little bit too small, right? So it really took me out of the box, I would say.
And I feel like that was big too, because like you said, like your dreams are too small. I only knew my neighborhood, and even hearing all the stories about all these kids who even knew about credit in high school, who knew about loans in high school, who knew about what college they wanted to go to when they went to high school. It made me realize the gaps that we have in like underprivileged neighborhoods where we don't have the same education in middle school, the same education in elementary school, and why a lot of us don't even make it to schools like this. I know, you know, there's a lot of controversy and there's a lot of conversation around like the SAT exam. I took the exam, you took it, we passed, we got in, but do you feel like it should be the only qualifier? Do you feel like they should get rid of the test? How are you feeling about the exam?
I definitely don't think it should be the only qualifier. I think we know now more than ever that test taking doesn't determine someone's ability to perform or your intelligence at all. But I don't think, you know, removing the test solves the core issue. I think removing the test is really a cop-out, right? Because the test, if you have 6 black students being admitted into Stuyvesant High School with 3,000 some odd kids in the body, that's just telling you the underlying issue is the New York City education system for communities of color, especially in the outer boroughs. You know, I know you took the test and you took a test prep program. So did I. I was in test prep after school for many hours preparing to get into this school. I would not have gotten into this school if it were not for that test prep program. So what we need to do is be focusing our resources on bringing that kind of test prep, on improving the education system for, again, our public school kids throughout these boroughs. And then they'll pass those tests, and then they'll get into these schools.
Going to Bronx Science and being around so many different cultures and backgrounds really prepared me for college, and going to school away from the city, adapted to different cultures, meeting new people, and helped me actually become a leader on campus, through our involvement with our fraternity or even with student government. It really prepared me for that, and I feel like if more kids had that more of a high school where they prepared you for college more, they will find more success in college and actually shoot for those leadership roles, which then will kind of turn them into more people involved in like civics and engagement and being able to advocate for things that they believe in and in their communities, because I feel like my civic engagement started in college. And going to Albany and being passionate about things and having people around me who are also passionate that could join me in that effort. So even with you and I and our fraternity at Albany, was there anything from college that you took away that brought you to your career today? And anything from Albany that you took back with you to the Bronx?
So I mean, going to college and then, we were involved in leadership organizations and fraternities, and then later the student government. That really opened my eyes that even just as a student, even as one student in a student body can impact so much change on that campus. Yeah. And then obviously being in the state capital of New York, it's always in the back of your mind that our government is operating just down the block. So then when I got into government and its politics, it really, really dawned on me how much of an impact one person really can have, and not just in a borough, in a city, but in a state. Like, these decisions really come down to someone who's making that choice, right? Everything that we have to always think about in this state was decided by somebody. Whether the system or the mechanism is right or wrong, whether you like it or you don't like it, somebody made that decision and somebody can change that decision. And that's what really inspired me when I was in college. And I took that to Albany, back to Albany, the state capital now, because we have the power to change those decisions. We have the power to make this state work how we think it can work best.
I feel like one of the most important points you made was that the fact that we went to Albany and the laws were literally being created right down the block, it's kind of a figurative meaning for how close we are to our elected officials and change. And a lot of people feel like it's two different worlds. And if you just are more vocal and you put your issues out there and you actually reach out to those who you voted for, you'll be surprised how quickly your voice could be heard and change can actually happen. So what can young people in the city now do to help bring about change in their communities?
It really is as simple as making your voice heard, right? We live in an era where you've got social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Your politicians have never been more accessible. So you have to use that ability to say what it is you want to say and ask and request the change that you want to see. Politicians are going to respond to what the constituency is asking for. But if you are not asking, if you are not making your voices heard, then how will the change come? Then you get a government that anticipates these things. Then you get a government that is working, I would say, at a more effective way, because now everyone is involved and we're not just only reacting to the changes that we know are happening.
And it's interesting now because I feel like the politics are coming to the people, because a lot of the politicians now on social media, they're a like away, a DM away, a message away from literally their constituents actually speaking to them. And you already know, but the primaries is June, it's coming around the corner, and it's one of the most historic elections in New York has seen in a long time for the mayor, the comptroller. And if there was a time where people could actually go out and get their voice heard, it would be in this primary and their vote. And what they want to see is the leaders in New York City. So for you, an elected official now, and a lot of young people may want to be in your shoes, or may just even want to know how they can get to their elected official. Do you have any words of inspiration or encouragement for any of our viewers watching right now?
Listen, every year we're told that this election is the most important election in a generation. But you have to understand, the election is not important because of who we're electing. The importance really falls upon, are you taking part in that process? That's when you make that generational change. Can you imagine a huge army of young people under 35, under 25, 18 years old, casting their ballot of who they want to see represent them? Can you imagine what that change would look like? That's why you need to take part in this process. Take part in the primary on June 22nd and vote for your next New York City mayor, comptroller, and city council member.